Mass deportation was one of President Trump's biggest campaign promises. 6 months into his administration, Immigration and Customs Enforcement has deported nearly 150,000 people thus far. And with the recent passage of Trump's tax and border bill, the agency will be getting an unprecedented infusion of funds, becoming the highest funded law enforcement agency in this country. Our immigration and politics reporter, Camilo Montoya-Galvez, spoke with the acting director of ICE, Todd Lyons, this Friday, and he began by asking whether the new money will help the administration meet its goal of 1 million deportations per year.
I definitely think it's possible. One thing, though, that ICE is historically known for in our mission is we detain to remove. We don't detain punitively. So people do hear that increase in the bed space, but it's not for long term. There's no reason for someone to linger in a detention facility after they've been lawfully ordered by an immigration judge. We want to ensure that they can get back to their home country safely and quickly.
More than a dozen individuals are facing charges for that violent attack against an ICE facility in Texas. The Department of Homeland Security, as you know, has also reported a sharp increase in attacks against your agents. What do you think is behind that? I
think the sharp increase in the rhetoric, especially from a lot of elected officials that are shaming, if you will, or speaking out against the ICE law enforcement mission is what's really increasing these attacks on officers. And that, unfortunately, the Alvarado incident down in Prairie Land, that is one that's really taken it to the next level. Just the increase is amazing. The fact that, like you said, 830% increase from last year in assaults on officers.
Do you think the increase in attacks against ICE officers is connected to the broader increase in ICE arrests across the country? Because you're seeing more arrests, you're seeing more attacks too.
I think we're seeing both. I think because we are more visible in the community. You know, there was recently people that talked about the amount of support that ICE had under President Obama. Well, during those times, we did make more custodial arrests, those arrests like you would
in jails.
In the jails, right? We weren't really out there. We just don't see that now with a lot of the sanctuary policies and just a lot of lack of cooperation. So you are seeing us out more. And I think there is more retention, kind of like you said. The immigration mission is one of the forefront of this administration. So there's a lot of scrutiny and publicity to it.
What do you say, Director, to the criticism that law enforcement officials, including ICE officers, should be identifying themselves and that the use of masks could be potentially dangerous, including because it could lead to imposters posing as ICE agents?
Yeah, and that's one of our biggest concerns. And I've said it publicly before. I'm not a proponent of the masks. However, if that's a tool that the men and women of ICE to keep themselves and their families safe, then I'll allow it. I do kind of push back on the criticism that they don't identify themselves. Men and women of ICE and our DOJ partners and local law enforcement do help us. They are identified on their vests. You can see the HSI, ERO, federal police officer, FBI on the back of the vest. So I would push back on the notion that we aren't identifying themselves. Now, what I would advocate for, and I've said this many times, is I know a lot of elected officials have put forward legislation or proposed legislation about banning of the masks, things like that. I would also want, elected officials to help us hold those people accountable that do dox or threaten an ICE officer or agent or their family.
So you will continue to allow ICE officers to wear masks during operations?
I will.
Do you know how many of the individuals arrested by ICE are people here illegally, but who also have serious criminal records?
ICE is always focused on the worst of the worst. One difference you'll see now is under this administration, we have opened up the whole aperture of the immigration portfolio, meaning that if you're here illegally and ICE goes out and arrests someone that is released from a sanctuary jurisdiction or wanted in their home country, and an ICE officer finds other individuals with them who are in the country illegally, we're going to take them as well. One thing, though, that I'd like to highlight is the fact that foreign criminal records aren't in U.S. data systems. So when we do go out and, say, arrest someone that has an Interpol red notice because they're wanted in their home country, they're still a criminal. But under the American judicial state, they don't have an American criminal history. But that doesn't mean they don't have a criminal history in their home country.
If your agents encounter anyone who is here illegally, irrespective of whether or not they have a criminal record, that person will be taken into custody.
If they're here in the United States illegally, yes, they will.
Those are called collateral arrests.
Correct.
We just, as you mentioned, rode along with not Border Patrol, but ICE agents in Maryland, and we saw the agents arresting sex offenders, suspected gang members, the individuals that the president has promised to deport from the country. He often talks about getting rid of the worst who are in the country illegally. But we have also seen ICE arrest day laborers outside of Home Depots, in some cases farm workers, people attending their court hearings in immigration court. Is the policy still to prioritize the arrest and deportation of people who are here illegally, but also are violent offenders?
Yes, ICE is going to focus on the worst of the worst. And that's what we do need to focus our limited resources on. That's one thing I've always said from the start. What's, again, frustrating for me is the fact that we would love to focus on these criminal aliens that are inside a jail facility, right? A local law enforcement agency, state agency already deemed that person a public safety threat and arrested them, and they're in detention. I'd much rather focus all of our limited resources on that to take them into custody. But we do have to go out into the community and make those arrests. And that's where you are seeing those increase of, if we encounter someone, say, that is here in the country legally, we will take them into custody. In regards to the worksite, like you mentioned, one thing that I really like to highlight, especially what kicked off June 6th in LA, is the fact that when you see ICE doing these work raids, like the marijuana grow farm, we are going there with criminal search warrants or criminal arrest warrants. Not only are we focused on those individuals that are, working here illegally, we're focused on these American companies that are actually exploiting these laborers, these people that came here for a better life, either forced labor, child trafficking. A lot of these worksite cases just isn't a victimless crime of someone here working legally. And that's why we're going there with these criminal warrants, to focus on these American businesses that are trying to make an extra dollar on the backs of these people that came here for a better life.
So you are planning on holding accountable the employers, the companies that are hiring people who are here illegally, not just the workers?
100%.
Because that has been a concern.
It is.
Our colleague Margaret Brennan recently obtained ICE data showing that only a small percentage of the convicted criminals that ICE has deported over the past 6 months had convictions for violent offenses. For example, fewer than 1% had homicide convictions. What do you make of that data?
We can't look at it just based on the violence or the propensity of violence in that crime. What I looked at is someone has committed a crime in the United States. Now, if you look at someone that has just been arrested, say, for DUI, while some people might say that's only a misdemeanor, we may have prevented vehicular homicide down the road for someone that's a habitual traffic offender. I can't look at the larger scale of what specific crimes are, whether it's a rape, a homicide. Of course, you want to get those worst of the worst. But if someone's committed a crime here in the United States and been let back into the community, and they're here illegally, we need to focus on that.